Good morning, everyone. It's also morning where I am right now. I just woke up, and welcome to another edition of the podcast. Hello, how are you today? I am your host, Mr. Corbett, and today we have a dear friend of mine named Mark Burry. Now, Mark is a great interview subject to talk to, is because he's an owner and creator of a brewery in Newfoundland called Baccalieu Trail Brewing. When my wife and I lived in Newfoundland, this was our go-to spot. The beer there is fantastic. They host a number of comedy nights. They host a number of music events, and so on, and other like unique events. One in particular stands out to me when it was a cheesecake and beer pairing night that we did at the brewery there. It was fantastic. This interview was fantastic. Mark is also a fantastic man and a great chat. So let's get to the interview with Mr. Mark Burry of Baccalieu Trail. Mark Burry, welcome to the podcast. Hello, how are you today? It's good to see you, my friend. How are things?
Oh, excellent, man. Summer's on its way now. We're putting in the kitchen in the brewery, so we're just keeping going, keeping pushing along.
I asked you how you're doing, even though we already had a pre-conversation into how you're doing, sort of thing. The reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is because not only are you one of the best brewsters I've ever had the chance of like meeting and drinking your beer, because your beer is still, like, I've been to a lot of breweries in Ontario, your beer is still top notch in my opinion. But I want to talk to you about how you got into like creating a brewery, owning a brewery, and kind of the obstacles behind that. So let's start from the beginning. Like you were an engineer first, and then you decided to say screw that career and become a brewmaster and own a business. How and why?
Yeah, I was an engineer working in oil and gas for 5 years, and a little bit before that, before I graduated. And yeah, it was a great career, no doubt about it. When the oil price took a downturn in 2015, it was a bit more stressful to be at work. It wasn't as fun. It wasn't. I couldn't picture myself sitting behind a computer for 30 years, waiting for a pension. So basically, I got into home brewing, and just as a hobby, just as something to do on the weekends, kind of thing. Around probably 2013, 2012, something like that, and craft beer in Newfoundland was, there was probably 3 breweries in Newfoundland at that time. So as I got more and more into the hobby, I started thinking more and more about turning it into a business. Now, what I envisioned was a lot different than what we have now, but I started thinking about it, and we, just kind of one day I had enough of the oil industry, and I said, you know what, let's do it. Wrote a business plan, probably over a couple months, and found a location in Bay Roberts, which wasn't far outside of St. John's, and then just kind of went at it with a cousin of mine.
Mm. So. And so, like, what kind of give you an idea of like that night that you made that decision, like how, like, I know it probably wasn't like a split decision sort of thing, but like how much euphoric was it making that decision to like, no, I'm done, I'm just moving on and doing something that you want to do, something that you have a passion for?
There's a couple things I remember, and that was a few years ago. A couple things stand out to me. One thing was, I had been chatting about this with my buddies at the time. I had a roommate at the time. And he said to me, man, now is the time to do it. Like, there's no craft breweries here. It might take off. Like, he said, if you don't do it now, you'll probably regret it. I remember that. And then I remember the day we got approved for our initial business loans. That was a big milestone. So I guess those two things stand out to me as memories, but like so far in the past now, I don't even know.
Well, so like when you first started making beer, like how bad was the beer when we first started, or has it always been good?
No, not at all. No, it's come a long way. The first when I started homebrewing, I was doing kits, basically like the kits where you just add boiling water and then throw in yeast and see what happens.
It sounds
Uh,
very newfie, to be honest. Just boil
yeah,
something.
pretty much comes in a big bag, liquid malt extract or whatever, and typically just add boiling water, a bit of yeast, and put it in the carboy and wait 2 or 3 weeks. I did a couple of those. I had a couple explosions in my spare room, in my old house, and basically the bung on the top where the air is supposed to come out, the CO2, got clogged up with yeast or hops or whatever, and it just exploded all over the ceiling a couple times. And then I think I might have done 2 kits, and then very quickly got down the rabbit hole of how do I make this from scratch? Like, what are the actual ingredients besides this like liquidy syrup thing that I'm using? What are the raw material that go into it? And like, just got down a rabbit hole of making beer from scratch on a very primitive scale and primitive equipment, primitive techniques. And then probably I was at my peak, I was probably brewing a batch every single week and having house parties and just giving it away just because I wanted to brew the next one, I think
You must have been the most popular guy at the parties for sure.
Yeah, I guess maybe, I don't know, probably not, but drinking.
I think you're underestimating yourself for sure. You're giving up free beer at a house party, my friend. And not only that, probably good beer too, because you actually do love your craft very much. I've tasted it myself many times. So you get this idea, and you're partnering with something. And I know a little bit of the history, but not all of it. But like, you started the business in Bay Roberts. The brewery is called Baccalieu Trail Brewery. For anyone who might be living in Newfoundland that wants to come check it out, do please, for love of God. And then that shortly, like within a year, kind of dissolves, and you're left to fucking operate this business on your own. So like, maybe tell that story a bit without revealing too much, obviously.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we found a building in Bay Roberts. My mom's a real estate agent. She helped find the property. Perfect location. It's on the main
Perfect
road.
location for me, by the way, because it's like a block away from where I live. So
yeah, it's on the main road, the main like road in Bay Roberts is also right on the water, which is kind of two
beautiful,
things.
Beautiful.
So we found the spot, and my former business partner, he was really good at construction. That was his background. So that was something that was a big bonus at the time, because this building was in basically a state of disrepair. It was really run down, old building, needed a lot of work. So he was really good at construction. And of course, I had been homebrewing for a couple of years, maybe 2.5 years at that point. So I was more on the technical side of how do we build a brew house and how do we get all the equipment? What kind of equipment do we need? That kind of thing. So while I was working on that, he was also working on the construction. I spent a lot of evenings and weekends there while I was still working as an engineer, just driving back and forth, stopping in on the way home from work and putting in a few hours, putting up drywall or installing equipment, whatever. When it came time to sort of operate the business and get it up and running, neither of us, to be honest, really had a clue of, okay, we built this thing, we got it to the point where we can make beer commercially, but it was like neither of us really knew how to run a business. So that was the point where our partnership got a little bit
Fractured.
A bit fractured, because neither of us, I didn't have the knowledge and he didn't have the knowledge. So, I kept making beer and trying to improve on that part of it and learn what I could. And then it got to a point where we decided to part ways. And, to be honest, probably was for the best, because, like I said, neither of us really knew anything about business. We just naively got into it thinking if you make beer, people will buy it. But that's far from the case. So anyway, we decided to part ways, and I've been sort of flying solo with it now. I'm the only, I guess, the only owner of the business for the past couple of years, past 2 summers. Well, 3 summers, so actually.
Yeah.
So this is our third summer now where I've been kind of operating it solo. Had to go through a lot of ups and downs. It's been like a roller coaster with everything from COVID to, managing staff, trying to get good people on board, trying to train people, and then having them leave and retrain more people. And I feel like now we're getting to, it's 3 years in, and I think that's common for a lot of businesses, but it's something you don't really think about when you start, is like, I'm going to be 3 to 5 years before I even get to a point where I have systems and processes and the right people in the right jobs and the defined roles for people, and things like that, and the ability to step back and sort of operate the business at the level just above, the base level where everything's going on, taking a step back. And now I'm able to operate, on a monthly basis, plan out my brews, get my orders in, get my inventory in, get my marketing done, get my whatever. So it's getting to that point just now where we're, I feel like it's getting to become more of a business rather than just like a rat race or like a run
Now,
around.
do you feel better having done it that way as opposed to like, because I feel like a lot of people probably would have wanted a preconceived notion of what to do before doing what you did.
Yeah.
Whereas like I feel like all the stuff that you've been through currently has helped you become a better business person and a better brewer, if that's possible. Because knowing you, like you like the bit, like you're expanding now. You got more stuff coming in. You're doing new beers every month, it seems, sort of thing. Like I feel like that kind of conflict has helped you like really become like a better brewer and business person.
Yes, I think it has. But if anyone were to come to me and ask me, what should I do? I'm thinking about starting a business. I would have I'd definitely advise them to probably get a mentor or get somebody who has probably 10 plus years of experience running a service-based, sort of customer service-based business. It's kind of hard to go through it all on your own and kind of come to these conclusions. Like I guess in a way I'm kind of fortunate because the market in Newfoundland for craft beer is pretty new, and it's getting more competitive now. But in the last 2 years, it's been pretty flexible. You can kind of have some forgiveness with the market to make mistakes. And we've certainly had not bad beers, but we've had our hits and we've had our misses, and we've come through a lot of different struggles. And being able to learn from and make mistakes and learn from them without going bankrupt, that's something you wouldn't get in a very mature market if you were to start a brewery in, say, Ontario or something. That's
well, and I think that goes to your point. Like you picked Bay Roberts, which where I lived for 2 years when I worked at Eastlink, and that is a town that supports their own. And you came in and gave them, the people of that town, a place to go out for, especially particularly for like a younger crowd. Like that was like going to Baccalieu Trail was me and my wife's favorite thing to do, because we'd see people of our age, sort of thing. Like there'd either be like a music band going on, there'd either be a band going on. There was some comedy. In particular, the one night that I care about fondly is that you did a cheesecake and beer pairing night, which was amazing. And so you've done all these like very different, very unique things to help grow your brand. Do you just kind of throw things at the wall and see what works, or do you have a plan-ish?
I'd say for the first 2 years, basically until COVID happened, that's what we were doing. We're basically throwing things at a wall to see what works, because we only had a tap room. We weren't doing any sort of retail or distribution of our product at all. We didn't have cans. If you remember, we didn't have cans or bottles. We just had the bar and growlers, right? So we were
Oh,
just
I got
trying
the
to make,
bottles right here. Product
yeah,
placement, my
yeah.
friend.
So that was like, that only started with COVID, right? But before
Yeah.
that, we didn't have those. We just had growlers and the bar. So we were trying to make the most of the space, like the community events, the um, trying to do like comedy shows, a lot of live music. We didn't have a kitchen at the time, so we were just trying to bring in food trucks and that kind of thing. So we really learned a lot from focusing on the tap room for the first couple of years, and then now that I guess sort of it evolved right when COVID started, we had to shut down the tap room because we were mandated to do so. So we had to figure out, well, how can we pay our bills? Like, what else can we do? So we started built a little bottling machine, and we were fortunate enough to make a business relationship with a retailer in St. John's that has 28 or 30 retail stores that they buy for. And they started carrying craft beer around the same time, March 2020, say into the spring of 2020 when the pandemic was going on. So we were able to start bottling and get our beer into St. John's, which was a huge eye opener because a lot of people hadn't even heard of us, right? We don't do a lot of advertising. We don't do a lot of like paid advertisements. So a lot of people hadn't even heard of us. And that was the, I guess it took me a while to get to that point when we started distribution. A switch sort of flipped in my head, of like, why didn't I do this before? Or why haven't we been doing this the whole time? But it was kind of fortuitous because I felt like our beer was just getting to the point where we were able to produce it consistently. The quality was consistent and stuff. So I think the distribution for us happened at the right time. And now, since then, we're able to basically produce at full capacity for the whole year. And we keep about a third of everything we produce for in our own tap room, and 2/3 of everything we make gets distributed to retail stores. So because I'm able to sell everything I'm making, I'm able to plan maybe a couple months ahead versus before with no distribution. I might only brew a couple times a month, right? If I had lots of beer in stock and it wasn't moving a whole lot. So you start to think about it in more of a manufacturing sense and not so much, we still try to do what we can with the tap room now that the COVID restrictions are lifting. We're starting up the comedy shows and stuff again. But now my focus is more on the manufacturing side of it. We've turned into like a manufacturing production style brewery versus a tap room sort of events focus. We're trying to balance both, but really the business has changed quite a lot.
Yeah, and like it was so cool because so the deal you had is with Marie's, right, which is a brand of convenience store in Newfoundland specifically. And I remember when that first happened because we were still in Newfoundland then, and I remember seeing your beer in St. John's. Like, oh fuck yes, this is awesome! We're supposed to go to a party tonight. Let's grab some beer. And I remember specifically every time, because I was wrestling in Newfoundland, I'd always grab a growler and have the growler at the after party so I could like promote you a little bit. Because like, no, try this beer from Baccalieu. Come to Bay Roberts, check it out, sort of thing. And so like, what would you say? Like, I mean, you really threw yourself into the fire voluntarily, sort of thing, starting this business. What would you say are like maybe one or two lessons that you've learned that would be the most important?
I would have studied more about business and branding and marketing before. If I had to go back and do it over again, I would have probably took a year before I even started the business to study what a brand is, because a brand is, it's hard to describe, but it's something that humans like psychologically get attached to. Like, people know Colgate toothpaste, and Coca-Cola, and Budweiser. Your brand can sell. Like, if you build a brand, and building a brand is like a subject matter on its own that you can study. I would have probably studied a lot more about marketing and branding and business, basic business, before I just threw myself into the fire. but
You really did.
been fortunate enough to be able to figure it out.
I was gonna say before we started the
mentally.
conversation, I forgot to mention, like, you look a lot more well rested than you did when we before. It
Yeah,
looks like you're
no,
getting a much better sleep.
getting much better sleep. Yeah, for sure. The other thing was I would probably, if a major lesson I learned was um, about debt. I've studied a lot about debt, and I was very anxious about the amount of debt that we were carrying. And this is very frank, probably I wouldn't just say this to anybody, but I was very in a very anxious state of mind about carrying this debt and like how could I get out of debt and like how could I possibly, you know, succeed with having taken on so much debt. But if you really take the time to study debt in a business or commercial context, then you can actually learn that sometimes debt is a good thing. And it depends on how you take on debt and what you use it for. So um, I'll just try to give you an example. Like if your expenses are $25,000 a month, it's a lot easier to pay for those expenses if you have the ability to produce $100,000 a month worth of beer than if you only have the ability to produce $20,000 a month worth of beer. And the only way that you can grow and the way that money is really created in our economy is through debt. And there's a whole rabbit hole I went down during the first spring in 2020 of the pandemic about studying debt and commercial debt and commercial real estate. And I was able to use that knowledge to leverage the assets that I had to build on extra production capacity. Something that I never learned in school as an engineer, just never was taught anything about it. The only thing I had ever thought my whole life was that debt is bad, try to get out of debt. But sometimes it can be really good.
No, I agree 100% because, like, I think a perfect example of that, including yourself, was Kevin Smith, right? He maxed out X amount of credit cards to make his movie Clerks and is now a very successful filmmaker because he wanted to do it. He knew it was a passion project. He knew that eventually, no matter what happened, he'd be able to pay that debt off eventually. And I think, I think that idea of like throwing yourself in the fire is something that more people should try and do. Because the end result is you fail and you learn a lesson and like you might be in some debt, but I mean, like, there are ways around, that sort of thing. And I think one of the things that you did most importantly was like you established your brand in Bay Roberts, while breweries were kind of a new thing to the area. And I don't know if anyone's that's listening has been to Newfoundland, but drinking culture is a huge thing in Newfoundland. Blue Star, India, Black Horse, that sort of thing. So this is providing a new, different taste to the province. And you mentioned that you started like fairly new when there was only like 3 other breweries. So like, how much did they help you? Because I know Newfoundland is very, very focused on like helping those who are part of the culture, part of the province. So like when did you reach out to those other breweries? Did they help you at all? Like, how did that work?
Yep. Oh, definitely. We were actually the 10th brewery to open. Now there is, I think, 20 or 21 in the province.
Yes, boy. What the fuck?
But, no, we had a lot of help from Port Rexton Brewery in Port Rexton and Dildo over in Dildo. Specifically, right at the beginning of the pandemic, Dildo offered me use of their canning machine for about 1 day a week to be able to take my beer and put it into cans and sell those cans through curbside pickup. And then, I mean, just out of the goodness of their hearts, never charged me a cent. And like things like that, like just they knew I didn't have any retail or any packaging or anything on the go. So that really was another kind of nudge to get into that market once I saw like, oh, people are interested in having our beer in cans or bottles or takeaway, whatever, right? That was huge. Port Rexton, they helped me. I guess they just provide a lot of information up front what they could
Because they were not to be, but like Port Rexon, they were the first brewery on the island, right? Or am
They
I
were
mistaken?
not the first, no. They were sort of the first of the new generation of breweries. They opened in 2016.
Like
And I
craft beer,
think,
right? I'm thinking
yeah,
craft beer.
yeah. I think they might have been the fourth brewery in the province. There was always Kitty Vitty. There was always, I guess,
Right.
Yellow Bell,
Yep.
and maybe Storm Brewing. And then beyond that, I think Port Rexon might have been the fourth. And then
But like to your
only
point though, like those
2016,
those
so like
like Kitty
5 years.
Vitty, Yellow Brew, like those are all in St. John's. Port Rexon is like the first one to open up not outside of St. John's, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the first one in quite some time. Yeah. And then since 2016, when they opened, it's gone from 5 breweries to 20 in 5 years. So it's pretty crazy. Now I don't know where it's going to go from here, but
How cool is it to be part of that development of that scene on that island?
yeah, like it's super cool. There's definitely an element of luck involved because it's just a bunch of people who are basically homebrewers. Most of the owners of these breweries were just homebrewers. Very few of them had professional commercial brewing experience. Like me, I didn't have any. Um, and we're all lucky that we were in the right place at the right time. Now that we're more established, you know what I mean? Like we were just lucky in a certain way. A lot of hard work and stuff involved, but just certain element of luck to it. And it was a good time, a good time to make the decision to take the risk to start one.
And like I think a lot of people, when I say Newfoundland, they don't really understand the culture of Newfoundland. Newfoundland to me is very much community orientated in the sense that like no matter what happens, your neighbor will kind of be there to help you out, sort of thing. I've experienced that personally. I've experienced professionally as well. And so like you guys have now 20 breweries in the province, probably growing every day, to be honest. Like, are you in those discussions where like the thoughts are like how do we grow the Newfoundland brand? Any chance like festivals, like craft beer festivals, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I just got to be sort of elected on the board of the Newfoundland Craft Breweries Association. So I'm the
Oh, oh, oh! I didn't know I was
now.
talking to a very big guy here. My
No,
goodness,
no, it's not like that. It's just we got together and formed an association, and we just had an election now. So
an
um,
election.
an election for board members,
It's
for the
it's got to be a
association.
lot more of a funner election that's about to happen then.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, for sure. It was good. But yeah, there's some discussion about that. I think it's kind of, I don't know, maybe this could be short-sighted of me to say, but I think it's kind of at a saturation point now, like 20 breweries for the island and Labrador as well. I could be wrong. Like, I don't know. It might be just short-sighted of me to say it's saturated, but it's getting there, and it is getting a bit competitive now. Like before, it was just like, oh, we all can't make enough beer to go around, but it is getting a bit competitive now. But there are definitely opportunities to grow as a group and grow the Newfoundland craft beer brand. I mean, there's no breweries besides I think Kitty Vitty who are exporting to other provinces. So that's something that's you know sort of on my mind, and I'm sure is on a lot of other breweries' mind of eventually can we grow big enough that we have capacity that we can send to Nova Scotia or send to Ontario or something
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
please send your beer to Ontario. I would love to drink it again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
I would
even
very
outside
much like to drink
of,
your beer again. So please
well,
send it
thanks.
to Ontario. You
Yeah, we're
sent
not
me like a
even
care
by the end
package,
of
and those
yet,
are the
man.
empties. I kept the empties because they're so colorful and beautiful.
Oh yeah, yeah, we're in cans now, so it's
Oh, we
bit
still got your two growlers too, as well. Do
nice.
you do you think that competition is good?
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty free market. Like if someone outcompetes me, that's just the way it works in the market. Not against that at all. No, I think it's good because it makes better beer for the consumer, and that's the main goal, is to provide the consumer with the best product at the lowest price. So
Mm. And your packaging as well. We're gonna go all over the place during this conversation because I haven't seen it in a long time. I've always wanted to ask you these conversations, but I feel like it's better to do it on a podcast, and I want people to hear this conversation. But your branding has been very good too. Like you always have like very clever names for the beers. You have very clever packaging. Well, I mean, it's one logo and then you different color. But like, how do you? What is your intent when you make a new brew, and you want to package that in a marketing thing, like in terms of like naming, colorization, that sort of thing?
yeah, now that's something I've been putting a lot more thought into since we got into distribution. Obviously, I didn't have to put a whole lot of thought into it when we were just our tap room only. Now the shelf space is in St. John's, which is the biggest market. Everyone's trying to compete for the St. John's market. It's pretty crowded, at least in Marie's anyway, which is like Marie's Mini Mart has established themselves as the number one place for the biggest selection of craft beer.
And that's
So
a good thing to be partnered with. I mean, really.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. It's good for everybody. It's good for them. It's good for their customers. Good for the breweries and everything. I find now we're having to do a lot more with our labeling. So I'm trying to do, instead of just the same label with different colors for every brand, we're trying to branch out and do something that jumps off the shelf a little bit more, like something new. That there's a couple cans we've done recently where you don't see the logo anywhere on the can until you pick it up and turn it. Um, and basically it's colorful, it's eye-catching, it's good beers as best we can make it, and the customer has to pick it up in order to determine what brewery it came from, and
Oh, okay.
turn the bottle or turn the can, look at it. And once you have it in your hand, the odds are you're more likely to buy it. So there's a
It's
bit of that
it it's
in
kind of like
market.
going to the fair and grabbing one of those bags of like $2 bags, of like surprise bags that you're pulling out all the different toys, try but more
Yeah,
adult and alcoholic beverage sort of thing.
yeah, because the reality is like people buy with their eyes. Like, there's, say, if you go into a store, there's a big cooler full of all these cans and a bunch of different labels, bunch of different colors, like whatever. You can't taste any of it at the store, so whatever jumps out at you really is what you're going to buy. Um,
And fair point to that. I remember one of the breweries that I really enjoy, Flying Monkey Breweries and Brewery. I've had maybe a few beers. Flying Monkey Brewery in Barry. I bought their beer the first time because it had such a unique looking can, and it was this fantastic heavy IPA that I really enjoyed. Um, and like it's the same like with your stuff. Like your stuff is very colorful. It's very vibrant. It stands out on the shelves.
yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I've been putting a lot more thought into lately, is the different styles that people tend to buy more, and how can we present it in a way that people are going to actually pick it up and look at the can and maybe put it in their shopping basket or whatever.
So I kind of want to ask you, like, uh, being kind of like you said, I think you were just say you were like the 10th brewery to open up on the island or something like that, right? What are some of the interactions that you have with the other breweries now that there's 20, and like how collaborative of an experience is that, and how, I'm gonna give you three questions, how rewarding is it as an artist yourself, and like because I feel like being a brewmaster and like creating these unique brews is an art form. How cool is it to be so collaborative with all these brands?
Oh, it's still very collaborative. Like we did a collaboration in the last fall, with Lamb Wash in Mount Pearl. They're a huge brewery, probably about 3 or 4 times the size of our brewery. A lot more knowledge, a lot more experience when it comes to different styles of beer, commercial brewing. Like it's still very collaborative here, and I think in general, like everywhere that there are breweries, they tend to collaborate. It's good in a sense. Like when we run low on a certain ingredient, of course, with COVID, there's been supply chain issues getting ingredients. So if we're running low and someone else has a huge stockpile of it, very often they'll sell it to us or vice versa. Like we've sold or loaned yeast and barley and different types of ingredients to other breweries just to try. The lead times to get anything to Newfoundland is about 2 weeks. So if you don't have the ingredients when you need them, it's great to have someone nearby where you can either get a loan of something or buy ingredients from another brewery. So it's still very collaborative like that. And I think it always will be, because I don't think the shipping situation to get ingredients to Newfoundland is going to get any better or any cheaper.
They haven't built that bridge yet, have they?
No, it's a bit crazy, but now we're starting to get ahead. We're starting to do our planning on a monthly basis of what we're going to need for like the month. So it's a bit better when you do that.
It's funny to think that like there's so many breweries now in Newfoundland that I know marijuana growth is a big thing, like having those like grow ups, everything. Like maybe transition to be like a yeast or a wheat crop, so the brewery is gonna have like in-house function on the island, sort of thing.
Yeah, you might see that in the future with hops or barley or something. Yeah.
So
hard to say.
we've talked a lot about the business portion, and I know that's what you want to talk about. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the beer, because your beer is, I mean, I drink a lot of beer. I've been around the world quite a bit. And honestly, when I say that your beer is some of the best beer I have, I'm very sincere in that. Like your No Snow in April is my wife's favorite. The Clever Size was my favorite. I had to look back and check the label. How do you know when a beer is good or not? Is it do you do it by taste? Like, can you feel like this is a good brew that I've made, or do you have to wait on the patrons that come to the bar and test it
out? It's a little bit of both, but mostly now I feel like myself as the brewer, and I have another employee now under me who's, quickly catching on to the different aspects of brewing. But I think, how do we know? I don't know. It's a bit of an intuition for ingredients. It's a bit of experimentation, and a lot of reading and a lot of studying for the styles I'm interested in, and a little bit of luck. And I don't know. You just tend to figure out what works. Like Clever Size, we still make that one. No Snow, we still make that. And but I guess the only way to get better is to try to innovate and use new techniques. So like the No Snow that you might have remembered tasting from a year ago is probably a whole lot different from the No Snow that we're currently making, because we have new techniques, we have new equipment, new yeasts, new hops, new ways of applying those different ingredients. But I guess you can't. It's like a chef. I guess it's like you kind of get to a point where, and by no means am I there now, but I'm getting towards there. If you put in 10,000 hours at something, you typically become good at it. Just getting to a point where you have an intuition about it.
So, like, now that you have that experience as a brewmaster with the big canisters and everything, have you ever tried to fuck with like making a small bathtub brew again, or just if you're bored or anything?
Yeah, we do. Well, the last one we did was probably in November. It's not 1-to-1. Like, it doesn't scale up. I guess certain parts of the recipe do scale up, but the amount of control you have over the process is certainly not there when you're doing it on a homebrew scale versus commercial scale. You have a lot more control of like more different parameters. Pretty much every parameter that you're working with, you have a lot more control over. So if I made a homebrew batch sort of as a pilot or a test batch, it would maybe turn out great or so. It really doesn't translate to what it's going to turn out like the same exact recipe on a commercial scale, in my mind, for certain beers.
When you
I don't really do it that much anymore. I'm kind of to the point now where I can, if I want to make a new IPA now, I'll just go ahead, do the recipe, and make it full scale. And
now I kind of want to ask you a question, because I this is from experience with interactions I've had with you in Newfoundland, obviously being a small brewery in a small town, people like myself who are assholes will come like, hey, Mark, you should try this sort of beer. Or, hey, Mark, you should try this. Or, hey, Mark, you should do this sort of thing. As a business owner and being a small town operator, like, how often do you take those suggestions to try that sort of thing? And how often is it more like in one ear, out the other sort of thing?
No, it's a lot of listening to your customers. It's Newfoundland's kind of unique like that, right? Like we're not, we kind of skipped a few steps in the craft beer journey. Like we, even when I was in university, even probably 10 years ago, like it was all lagers, Coors Light, Molson, Bud Light. And now we are to the point where we're like sours and IPAs, but we just made a jump. We didn't go through any of the steps in between. Like, there's so many more different beer styles than sours and IPAs, but it seems like everyone's just on board with sours and IPAs. So we're pretty sour and IPA heavy. But Newfoundland, the craft beer market here didn't go through that, I guess, like maturation. It just went from full stop to like flat out go. And but now I'm listening to customers more often. Like we're going to do a light lager now. We're actually going to do a light lager because why not? It's what people want. I think it would sell really well. It can be still a craft beer, but it can be made really well and still taste delicious. So I'm listening a lot more to what people want now.
And so I think that's important as an artist, which I would be inclined to say that you are, because you've made so many different types of beers in the time that I've known you. And you just said that how like there's so many other beers that you want to try and play with and everything. So like when you have an idea for like a new beer, like is there a thought process or like a sort of method of madness that you get to what you want to do? Or is it kind of like, again, we go back to throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what works?
It's a bit of both. Like for me, I watch a lot of YouTube and I read a lot. So I get ideas or I might get inspiration from a brewery that I was watching on YouTube or a book that I was reading describing a certain hop. It's a bit of it's a bit of just what variables you're taking in and what you decide to make from that. Like it could be like, oh, I saw a brewery in the UK recently made this type of beer, a dark mild, it's called, a British beer. We're actually, because I watched a YouTube video on that and I thought it was really interesting how they applied certain principles to this style of beer. We're going to try to make one now this week. So it could be inspiration from anywhere really, or it might be a totally unique idea. Like the Right Slush beer we made over Christmas last year was a huge hit, and it was based on like a Newfoundland tradition of slush, which is basically sugary vodka liquid. So
I thought you were talking about the slush on the roads. It
no,
was like
no,
a slushy porter or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's just, the bottle you have there behind you on the shelf. It's like pineapple, orange, lemon, lime type
Oh shit, yeah.
tradition that Newfoundland has. Pretty much everybody in Newfoundland knows what slush is. So we decided to make a slush inspired pale ale.
Wow,
So
that's fantastic.
you have your hits and you have your misses, and you're just like, I guess you're just trying to.
So let's talk about the hits, right?
Yeah.
How rewarding is it for you to be 3 years in and see so many people come in and out of your bar or your brewery and like enjoy the beer?
Very rewarding, very something I'm very grateful for, and something that I feel like I owe it to them to have the best beer that I can possibly make for when they come in. It's certainly take it very seriously and take the quality of the product very seriously, and then the more people enjoy it, almost like the more seriously you take it and the better you want to be at quality control and consistency and everything else. Like for me, it's like a feedback loop. Like if I see people really liking it, I want to try to make it even better.
And to further that point, how rewarding is it to you And I don't know if your view has been skewed on this, but how has your taste of beer evolved since you started making such good beers?
Um, I certainly know what uh, mistakes taste like. Well, because beer is can be very finicky. Like there's a lot of variables that go into it, and if you make a mistake at a certain point in the process, it manifests itself in a off flavor or certain like bad taste, or um, even if you make a mistake in the packaging, for example, it can make your beer oxidized and taste like wet cardboard. So
Really?
uh, yeah, oh yeah, if oxygen gets in there or whatever, right, it turns the beer brown, like when you cut an apple open and the apple turns brown.
Oh,
Beers,
geez, that's news to me.
yeah, no, it's true. It's like you learn what a bad beer tastes like and what a mistake tastes like. So I guess my taste has like matured in that I'm able to taste flaws better. Um,
You're a connoisseur, my sir.
maybe, but not, you're always learning. So it's getting better for sure. And when you drink other people's beer and other breweries' beer, you can certainly appreciate a lot more when a beer is like 100% made correctly, even if it's not something you like or not something that you're so super like in love with that particular style. But if it's made well, you can appreciate that a lot more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And so you mentioned styles of beers. Now, in talking about this sort of thing, you have had a milkshake IPA, which I think people don't understand how good that can be, which is the no snow. You've had porters, sours. You mentioned earlier how you want to try so many different kind of styles of beers. What are some of the styles that you might be looking forward to like making and incorporating into your business model?
Yeah, looking forward. Well, our sours have become a really big hit, I guess, in on the Avalon anyway. So looking forward. We have like two sours that I'm really proud of, and we're just going to always keep making those. Like I said, I really want to get into making a light lager, um, Baccalieu Light, and probably over the winter we'll probably make that one, or into the fall when we have a bit more time on our hands, because a lager takes a lot longer to produce. I also want to get back a little bit more away from IPAs and sours and try to make some more traditional styles of beer. So we did a Kolsch recently, which is like a German lagered ale.
Ooh, that sounds
Basically, a lot,
delicious.
yeah, a
Is
lot
that
like
is that is that is now is that a dark ale or is that like an amber ale, or what are the differences between those two?
no, a Kolsch is light ale, like a straw colored, like a blonde colored
Oh,
ale.
really? I thought it
Yep.
would be dark or something like that.
No, no, it's just a German lagered ale. It was basically the Czechoslovakian, Czech Republic people. They invented the Pilsner, which is famous all over the world as like a crisp, refreshing beer. And then the Germans came up with the Kolsch as like to compete with the Czech folks who made the Pilsner. They had a Kolsch, so
Those Eastern Europeans, I tell you.
they're competitive. Yeah. So anyway, we made one of those recently. And lagers are something that we haven't gone into a whole lot. So we're going to try to get into that and also bring back some more traditional styles, like British styles. We're making next week a dark mild, it's kind of like, how IPAs can be like tropical, bright, citrusy fruits.
Yeah.
The dark mild that we're making is going to be kind of like using the same principles, but it's going to emphasize more dark fruits like fig and plum and raisin, and be like a dark complement. It's almost like a dark New England IPA. That's what we're kind of going for anyway.
You're killing me, Mark. You're rating off. You're spouting off all these great, delicious beers that sound like they're gonna be awesome, and I don't get to taste them. So you son of a bitch.
Just trying to expand my skills, expand our knowledge a little bit, and get into some different styles, so we don't get like pigeonholed into sours and IPAs.
But also, so you don't get bored too, right? Like you're an artist.
Yeah.
You're creating. You want to create new stuff, new content. Speaking of content, I mean, you put a very focus on hosting events. So you've had musicians, you had comedy nights, you've had the cheesecake night, you've had the paint and drink night. How important was was it for you to like have event nights at the brewery to kind of maybe establish the brewery as a place to go, or to keep just bringing the community together?
Yeah, that's super important. That's in my mind, that's what a craft brewery should be. It should be like an event space, a sort of hub for the community. Traditionally, that's what it's been. Like if you go to the UK, where you can get local beer almost in every little community, there's a little local brewery. That's where people congregate. So we we did that, and I thought we were pretty successful at it up until COVID, of course. We had to switch gears. But now that the restrictions are lifting, we're trying to go back to a little bit more community based. We just did a fundraiser this weekend for the Trailway, the Conception Bay North Trailway, and we have a comedy show next weekend. So that's like our first comedy
With Matt
show.
Wright, who I've met before and is a fantastic comedian.
Yeah, that's our first like comedy show in probably a year and a half, right? So we're getting back into that, and I'm looking forward to more of that because that's, you have two sides of the business. There's a manufacturing side, and there's also the community, space. So trying to focus more on that one now for this year.
It's so weird to think, like I tried to host the comedy events at your brewery when we were in Newfoundland, and now I'm hosting a show every other Thursday at a brewery. It's the difference between the small community and the large city is insane when you really skink it. And you're not just in Bay Rars, but you're in St. John's, and I feel you've expanded past Gander, maybe, or is it across the island, or?
No, we're still only really here on the Avalon yet. It's just, still producing as much as we can, but we haven't been able to distribute. We haven't been able to satisfy the demand here yet for our beer. So we haven't been able to get out past the Avalon, but we're in the fall. I think it'll slow down. Normally our tourist season slows down around the end of September. So hopefully then we'll try to distribute a little bit more out towards central Newfoundland and the West Coast, maybe. So
yeah, it's a kind of I have to imagine it's probably a bit of a hard market to breach and like find ways to get those beers out, because it's a big island. It's extremely
That's the hard
big.
thing about it. Yeah, it's hard to justify sending out small quantities because you're paying so much to ship them or truck them or transport yourself. So it's trying to find a time of the year where you have enough excess capacity and a new untapped market that wants that excess capacity to make it like financially viable to do. Because it is a long distance, like to get out to Gander, it's 400 kilometers. So
Which is what, 700 miles maybe for any US listeners. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, like 220 miles or something. But
so like you guys are expanding now. You got the comedy show coming up. Like you kind of seem to be in a good groove of how the business is progressing. Do you have any goals of what you want to do with it, or are you just taking it in as it comes?
I kind of live on a 2-week kind of horizon right now. Like I think about the next 2 weeks, and that's pretty much all. I don't really plan out further than that. There's a couple big things that I'd like to have in place by the fall, which is our kitchen. And so that's the wheels are turning on that now. We might have that open in a week or so. But I also like to get a more automated canning machine than we currently have. It's very manual at this point, so I feel like we could churn out a lot more beer. Like I'm just looking at the bottlenecks, right? And I don't really have a plan for like say 5 years from now. Just maybe 2 weeks to a month outlook.
Well, yeah, you don't want to jump too far ahead. That way, if those things don't come to fruition, you feel like you don't become bitter. I feel like the 2 weeks is probably a good method to have for that sort of development sort of thing, because it is fluctuating, as you know, because we're still kind of in the middle of a pandemic. So
yeah, it's true too. Yeah, we are still very much in the middle of this. So, and the other thing is, I'm very much still hands-on, sort of making beer. So in the amount of time I have to think and to plan, typically I don't have a lot of time to think about much more than 2 to 4 weeks away. So, but yeah, no, it's good. It's a lot better than just thinking about it day by day and not having a plan for tomorrow.
So I kind of want to leave with this. As an artist, because I've been trying to kind of hammer that point down. Like, your beer is very tasteful. Your beer is very unique in the sense, like, from an artist standpoint, like, when you see like a recipe, what do you look at? Does it become like Picasso sort of thing for you? I don't know if that's an apt description of it, but like, when you see or make a recipe, like how fun or how challenging is that sort of thing?
I kind of look at it, I'm very visual. So like if I see something on Instagram or some brewery in California has made this type of beer and it's presented to me in a photograph or a video, like I'll latch onto that and I'll like build a recipe around like a vision for something, rather than, I guess, starting from a point of looking at like ingredients and trying to build up from a list of ingredients. I'll kind of have a vision in my head of the branding, now the label, and the way the beer is going to look, and the aroma and the taste. I'll try to start from that point and work my way back to a recipe that would sort of produce those final conditions. That makes sense.
And did you take that same process when you were designing the brewery as well?
No, that was just random, a lot of random circumstance, right? Yeah.
Because the design of the brewery is actually very nice. It's very sleek. You have that sweet patio. It's on the water. It's like it's nowhere, but it's somewhere, which is great.
Yeah, thanks. We've done some renos too over the last 6 months or so, like to our tap room, and we've built on a piece to add more production in that. So yeah, I just feel like I have more of an idea of what I want the business to look like now. But yeah, it takes, like I said, we're in year 3, and I think hopefully by year 4, year 5, maybe we'll be where I kind of envision it can go, hopefully.
Well, my envision of what the business can go is that you should enter your beer into some international competitions, own the shit out of those competitions, and become an award-winning brewery, and then grow the brand so you can eventually sell it in Ontario. Because I miss your beer so much.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely going to enter competitions next year. The deadlines have all passed for this year, but as soon as the competitions are open next year, we're gonna enter some stuff, because there are Newfoundland breweries who have won a couple of awards and stuff. So
fuck them.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like it'd be cool to have an award or something to put on the wall, right?
And you could very much win awards. All right, Mark Burry, thank you so much for being my guest on this podcast. If people want to find you on social media, or like if they want to check out the brewery, how do they do that?
It's the handle is Baccalieu Trail Brew Co. It's sort of a long name, Baccalieu Trail Brewing Co. BACCALIEU. So you can check us out. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, feel free to stop by for a beer.
Yes, if you're ever in Newfoundland, and I do encourage people who might be listening to this podcast to check out the beautiful province of Newfoundland and check out all 20 breweries there. Mark, thank you so much. I miss you, buddy. We'll have to do this again.
All right, take care now, Mitch.
Well, there you guys have it. There is the interview with Mr. Mark Burry. He is the brewmaster and owner of Baccalieu Trail in Bay Roberts, Newfoundland. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. We went in depth with the idea of starting a business and kind of like chasing your dream. And I think that's what this podcast is all about, is, encouraging people to chase their dreams, do what they want to do, and having fun and having great conversations along the way. If you want to follow Mark and his journeys, he's available at the brewery's Instagram, which is Baccalieu Trail Brew Co. I'll spell Baccalieu for you, obviously, Baccalieu Trail Brew Co on Instagram is where you can check them out. They also have a website. They also have a new food beverage in the restaurant as well called at Crafty Crumbs NL that you can check out. So they're serving food, they're serving beer, and to this day it's still some of the best beer I've ever had in my life. So if you're ever in Newfoundland, please go ahead and check it out. Shoot Mark a message, ask him questions. He loves talking about beer, he loves talking about business, he likes just talking and shooting the shit, and he's also a magician. So maybe luckily we'll have him on for another episode where we can talk magic. That's it for me. That's it for me today. I hope you guys had a great week so far, and I will see you guys down the road. Cheers.